Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video we're going to be taking a first look at Mythic Martinez, who is going to be the next promo character coming to the game. This is not the first Martinez we've had in RTS. I do believe we did not have an S-class version, but we have had quite, I don't know, fan favourites. I think the Lacerator within the 6-star era was quite a lot of people who like that character. It did seem to work quite nicely. Now, this version is quite different. It is a fast character, as we see with the dagger. It's double daggers, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of Doc Stevens, honestly. Mythic Doc Stevens in terms of like the visuals when it comes to the get up. Bit more armored, I guess. Bit more like offensive rather than medic based, but visually kind of looks cool. He's got the bandana, as we know, with Martinez. This time it's blue, so he's got a, an assortment of apocalypse bandanas. This is something we do know about Martinez now. If we look at him on the left hand side, we can see his art. He's like just charging towards us. I do like the art very much. As we look at his stats as a tier 5 gold mythic at level 600, he will have 14,613 attack, 12,177 defense, and 13,801 HP. He is that fast character, like I said. He is considered a control character, so with those stats, he's, I guess, seen as more of an offensive control character. He is mythic, of course, and his allegiance is Woodbury, and we have seen a couple of Woodbury characters lately, so we could potentially be seeing a Woodbury Mythic Trials just around the corner. So we'll check out Martinez's Adrenaline Rush, and it is called Confusing Raid. It is a 66 AP cost rush, so just as fast as most people's rushes are for attack teams. Deal 400% damage to up to 2 enemies. Up to 2 enemies get confused for 2 turns. So he's just a heavy nuke. It kind of reminds me of the 6-star version of Michelle. If you remember Michelle, she pretty much did the same sort of deal. I think she was like 450 or 550% damage to 2 enemies. Those enemies get stunned, but potentially, with the way this is being worded, the characters that get taken out might not just the ones that can get confused. So he could potentially take down 2 and then confuse 2. So there is quite high potential there. We'll have to check that out in a second. But 400% damage seems pretty reasonable to 2 enemies. You will be able to obviously select one of those enemies, and the other hit is going to be completely random. This can be, a little bit of a downside if they've got like Outlast on the defense team and you're not wanting to take them out in that situation. But I think if you were to take out an Outlast, and I'll try and test this out as well, it should confuse that Outlast. So like I said, we'll just have a quick test. Okay, so we are on the rush turn, and we just want to see who does get confused. I'm going to focus Alice here. As you can see, she's going to take trait damage. She's also half HP, so quite likely to take her out. And we want to see if the person who gets hit with the second hit gets confused, and if 2 people get confused, but if I take out Alice. So I do take out Alice. You can see Erica got confused, but you can see Maggie got hit, and Glenn got the other confused. So it looks like the 2 people that actually get hit aren't the people that get confused. So if you want to control somebody, you kind of have to not target them and hope that the second hit doesn't hit them as well. That is kind of interesting. I'll have to test out and see if it confuses anybody if there is no one else alive, so if it's just 2 players. Okay, so we've got 2 very tanky characters here. I might still take out Alice, but I shouldn't be able to take out Doc because he is massively buffed up, and we're not going to do any trait damage. So I'm going to just select Alice, see what happens. He is going to... Okay, so that is good news. If there is only 2 characters alive, they should be the ones to get confused. I was kind of worried about that, because that would have just massively reduced the power of that rush in terms of like control factor, especially at the end of a fight. So if there are 2 characters alive and you use this rush, those characters will get confused. But it is worth noting that if you do have an Outlast character alive in the first 5 and you do this rush on them, it'll be 2 other characters that get confused, just like we saw previously. So you can obviously see the confused side of this as a good thing or a bad thing, because you won't be able to control who the people are that are confused if there is a 5-man team still alive. However, a lot of the time, at least I find, when I do control somebody with someone who does a damage dealing rush, I'm most likely focusing them and targeting them anyway to take them out. And if I do that with Martinez, like, you can rush first with Martinez, then follow it up with damage that's required, like potentially like with a Michonne to just execute anyone who's got just a little bit of HP left to get the decap in. you've not wasted one of those 2 confuses. They will still be in the game. They'll still be on one of those other 2 characters. So that's actually pretty good. And like we saw at the end of the fight, it isn't like you're getting into a situation where he's not going to be controlling. He still will be. So, I mean, it's interesting. We haven't seen anything like this before, I don't think. Anyone can remember any character that does it this way, please let me know. I don't think this is a bad thing, but it might take a little bit of getting used to. But I think it'd be actually quite good for like selected auto teams. So like you will just click a character and hit auto, and when he rushes, at least you know the other people who you're not selecting are going to be controlled. So that's not a terrible thing. If we look at the upgrades at tier 3, it gets a 200% damage boost. So that's going to be for free, no military supplies required. And the same for the tier 5, no military supplies required for an extra confused target, but he will need to be tier 5 for that. Obviously, that means a 2nd gold mythic. If you do not get him twice, he will only be confusing 1 enemy, which is nowhere near as powerful, of course. And on an attack team, you wouldn't necessarily normally have to get a character to tier 5, especially someone who's like a control, which sort of fits into like the support role, like support, medic, and control on an attack team. You maybe want 1 or 2 of them on an attack team. They don't need to be like your most heavy stat-based characters, but you're going to lose out on heavy amounts of control in his rush. So that is quite a downside when it comes to that. But we will shift focus across to the signature move, and it is called Calculated Strike. It has got an initial cooldown of turn 2, cooldown of 2 turns, and the number of uses unlimited. Make a critical hit attack against an enemy, disarm that enemy for 2 turns. Now, I actually think this is quite good because you see a specialist, he's not a disarm, but this is guaranteeing a disarm, which is obviously great. Now, it is a guaranteed critical hit, and again, it will play into his specialist skill. So it will be 2 forms of control, effectively, that this will apply, or at least have a chance to apply. There can be things like resists on characters, you know how it works. But this would also mean that he would get 65 AP after the first 2 turns, because a basic attack and a signature move, as long as he's got huge AP on attack, would result in 65 AP. So you have to have a little bit of AP manipulation there, but he should be absolutely fine. And I don't think this is a terrible one at all. The only downside is if you were someone who was going to gear him out with like the most pristine potential weapon that he could hold, he's not really getting much of a benefit from that weapon with the signature move, because he would have hit a critical attack with the actual guaranteed critical hit on the weapon on most signature moves. But I mean, it's a weird situation. This can actually still be resisted 20% of the time by tanks. That is obviously something to note. But the disarm, they would have to actually have a resist mod or have that in part of their kit as well. Okay, so we are on turn 2, and I have an 8% weapon in this team, which you will require to get a natural rush on Martinez. He has not been attacked at all, so normally he would get 65 AP right now, but he's going to obviously have enough. We are going to focus someone who we want to control. Let's say we're going to focus on Erica for whatever reason. Now, we're going to swipe left. You can see that we will disarm her. That's the guaranteed apply. And we will potentially confuse her as well if she hasn't got a resist, just because of his special skill, which we will get into later. So she is disarmed, which is good for just follow-up damage, obviously, on top of what we've just done. She would generally have a focus stun weapon on defense teams. So disarm is nice. This is especially nice if you want to swap out, an actual proper disarm when it comes to like Jesus or Wayland. You could switch them out and you could move Martinez into your team. However, because this is a turn 2 signature move, that does come with quite a big element of risk when it comes to disarming a character, in that you still have to do hits the first turn. It's obviously the biggest issue you're going to run into. It is a guaranteed proc. It isn't like it relies on the basic attack, which you would normally rely on, like, let's say, Wayland. You would normally rely on him hitting a crit to actually disarm the enemy, but at least you've got the potential of that actually happening with Wayland, where there's nothing like that with Martinez. So it's up to you whether you think it's worth the risk of switching those sort of characters around. Now, when we look at the upgrades of this, it has got -1 cooldown. That is the secondary cooldown, when he can do it the 2nd time, 3rd time, 4th time, so on and so forth. And it goes to 2 turns. And then on tier 4, it gets +1 disarm duration. So instead of it being a 1-turn disarm, it goes to 2 turns. So again, no military supplies here. When Limit Break comes out, most likely the rush or the signature move will be upgraded where it requires military supplies. I think basically any character that doesn't have military supplies requirements right now will probably get get a boost that does require it. So kind of actually, you know, exciting for some characters, because if you're using characters that don't have any military supplies required for the rush or the signature move, they could get a nice little buff with that limit break release. We'll have to wait and see what with that, but I think this signature move is reasonable. It's not you know, fantastic. You know how signature moves work. It's pretty basic, but it is a guaranteed critical hit. And I also would assume that while it says make a critical hit against an enemy, it would just be a normal 100% damage critical hit. You know, just a normal basic attack that is guaranteed to crit. Now, of course, Martinez is a mythic character, so he will have those mythic abilities. These are the passive skills. He has got precision because he is a control character, which means enemy resists are 20% lower against this character, which is obviously great. The next one is opportune strike. When attacking targets with a confused status, he gets 15% attack. I don't think it could follow up off of his specialist skill because it's only one turn. Basically, the next, like if he does a basic attack that crits, the next turn that's already worn out, so it's going to have to rely on someone else getting confused in, so you're going to have another confused character. There are other confounding characters out there. For instance, there is Yumiko, so the combo between those characters could be quite good. The next one is focused rage. When attacking, 40% chance this character gets focused for 2 turns. That's a nice little bonus, just a bonus chance of not being able to be confused or taunted. And there are some taunt characters out there on defense teams, as you well know, and there are a couple of confused ones as well. So that is actually just a nice little bonus on top. And the last one is called Bastion. When this character starts their turn, 40% chance that this character gets a Guardian Shield. Now this is kind of weird. I guess it's just to protect him against being heavily focused. You could make him extremely offensive. He can do quite a lot of damage by the looks of things, but this would be awesome for a defense team, obviously. Any percentage chance just to gain Guardian Shield at the beginning of the turn would just be very infuriating. That potentially means you could try and switch it up. You could try and maybe use him on a defense team here. There's nothing too attack team minded in these. This is quite general. I think they could work on attack or defense. I don't think it's going to be any, downside. If he's on attack, opportune strike will just amplify the damage he's doing. If he's on defense, it would just give him a boost when you've defensively modded him. So again, potentially usage on both teams because of the mythic abilities. Okay, so we'll just test out that potential combo with Yumiko just in terms of boosting the damage of Martinez. We'll do a basic attack. We have confused the enemy. So the follow-up damage from Martinez, it should say above his head like 15% extra attack. There we go, 15% attack. Now we will boost the AP of Martinez, as you can see, and we'll just hit the defend action on Alice here. Will he get the Guardian Shield? He doesn't get the Guardian Shield, but we'll test this out again. What we're going to do is we are going to do another basic attack with Yumiko, and now we're going to see if the 15% extra attack comes in because of that confuse. We'll do the rush. Does it work on rushes? It doesn't work on rushes, so it only works on his basic attacks and his signature move. This is obviously something to take into account. It is also worth noting that, as you can see, the confuse did actually confuse the target that I selected this time. So potentially that is a little bit more random than I originally thought. So in my opinion, nothing too crazy on his passives, but they are going to be just kind of nice little bonuses when they actually take place. Especially the Guardian Shield. I think that's obviously going to be a nice little thing. You can stop rushes, you can stop any sort of damage, and you're going to stop AP gain from the defense team. So there's quite a few things that will help there. And then, like I said, it could potentially be used where he could be used on the defense team because of it as well. Now we'll check out the skill upgrades, and at tier 1 it is the opportune strike. It is the extra 15% attack versus characters who are confused, but it doesn't seem to work with the rush right now. At tier 2 it is precision. That is the one because of he is a control character. At tier 3 he gets the first half of focused rage. This is the 20% chance that this character gets focused for 2 turns, just on the random, just doing a basic attack or anything basically when doing an attack. And then the next one is tier 4. It's the second half of focused rage, another 20% chance. And then lastly at tier 5 it is Bastion. When this character starts their turn, 40% chance that this character gets a Guardian Shield. So you would need to get 2 of those characters to get Bastion. So if you did want to use him on the defense team, I would say you would probably need to have him tier 5 anyway, just because of the stats. But that's where you're going to get that nice little boost when it comes to his passives and the potential Guardian Shield annoyance that you can bring to the table. Next up is his specialist skill, and we have been talking about this a little bit. Now, I won't show you any examples because I've basically been showing you examples of how it works. Confounding: when this character performs a critical attack on a human enemy, that enemy will be confused for 1 turn. Confused characters will not use rushes or active skills and have a chance to attack a random teammate. They obviously can't use signature moves either. It'll be actives and signature moves are kind of in the same bracket of abilities. Now, it is worth noting that he's going to get a guaranteed confound, or at least a guaranteed confound proc, because of his signature move. So you don't necessarily have to build him for crit if you don't want to, but if you do want to utilize confounding on his basic attacks, he's going to have either a lot of 1535s, which I think a lot of people would probably build anyway in most attack teams, or you'd have to put a crit mod on him. But I would generally just not bother going for crit on weapons. In you know, it's much better to go for percentage stats. Flat crit rate is just not worth it. Crit in mods, crit in the 4 slot with 1535, that's about all you need. And talking of the weapon, we do have Martinez prepared double daggers. They are some of the coolest weapons we've seen in the game, obviously. Now, the stats themselves are nothing to be to shout about. 25% attack, a medium bonus to AP when attacking, and for some reason, bonus defense, 35% defense when being attacked by enemies with more than 60% of their max HP. So, not fantastic when it comes to the stats, but when it comes to what I put on Martinez, I think offensively, you just want to go with attack, of course. AP on attack. Now, that 3rd slot is kind of up to you, but the 4th slot is definitely a 1535. Now, when it comes to the 3rd slot, though, you can do like percentage extra damage based on their HP. That would only work on his basic attack and his signature move. You could potentially go with, for instance, I think you can get trait damage on fast weapons. I'm not 100% certain, but you could potentially go with impair. You know, there is an impair on attack knife called the diamond knife, and because he's a control character, he has more chance of that actually procking against people with resistances. So that could be actually a good way to go as well with him. So this is Mythic Martinez, a quick look at how his abilities do work. He is another control character to come to the game. We do not have a huge amount of control characters just yet, and I do know it's like a kind of new area for Scopely where they've kind of created this new role, and I do hope we do get some nice control characters going forwards. They are quite important, especially attack team control characters is quite lacking right now, and Martinez is kind of fit that bill when it comes to a promo. But obviously we need a little bit more of an accessible character hopefully as well. But this character is going to be quite useful because I think everyone probably realizes the defense doesn't have much to be feared of when it comes to control right now. And this guy's going to change that a little bit. Yep, this player being in the game is going to help everybody when it comes to resist stuff being used by defense teams. We might start seeing people opt for double resists over heavy stats going forward. We'll have to wait and see. But do tell me your thoughts on Martinez as a mythic character, the next mythic character to come to the game. Like I said, he is part of the Woodbury Allegiance. I think he's the 4th character to come out as part of the Woodbury Allegiance. So with one more, that would be a potential Woodbury Mythic Trials on the horizon, like I said in the intro. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But that is the end of this video, guys. Please do leave those thoughts in the comments down below. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. And as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.